Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm a former chairman of the London Fire and Emergency Planning Authority, and 1 week after the Grenfell fire, the London Fire Brigade took me to the tower and took me to the top of the tower, and what I saw there was a sobering experience, to say the least. So this bill, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is to be welcomed. It was a Conservative Party manifesto commitment last year, and it was announced in the Queen's speech at the start of this session. I don't believe this bill represents the final destination in terms of fire safety legislation, but I do believe it's a good first step along the way to prepare the ground for further legislation later this year. Now, although it's a short bill, it seeks to take a grip on a very key issue. As my right honourable friend, the Minister, said in his opening statement, in amending the Fire Safety Order 2005, the new bill makes clear that enforcing authorities can hold building owners to account if they're not compliant with their responsibilities for external walls of buildings, particularly pertinent in the light of Grenfell, as well as for the inside. Now, this is a major step forward. However, I do believe that there are areas of the bill that could be improved as it progresses through Parliament. Now, the first issue that I want to touch on was also touched upon in the speeches from the Honourable Gentleman, the Member for Sheffield South East, and the Honourable Lady, the Member for Stretford and Urmston, and that is the issue of the responsible person. The bill doesn't make clear what constitutes a responsible person, what skills and abilities they need, or what precise enforcement powers they have. Pinning down the identity of the responsible person has long been the bane of various fire and rescue authorities' existence. It can lead to long delays when it comes to taking enforcement action. The designation of who is a responsible person has in the past been applied to individuals, to owners, tenant management organisations, local authorities, other forms of residents groups, etc., etc. This legislation would be considerably strengthened if it were to require the designation by name of the identity of the responsible person on a building-by-building basis. There are also questions around the competence of the responsible person, and this is not dealt with in the bill. Greater clarity around what constitutes competence on a building-by-building basis would be very beneficial, because the skills for fire assessment in, say, a low-level one-storey care home might be materially different to a multi-storey tower block. There's a gap too regarding how the impact and success, or otherwise, of this bill were to be measured. One way might be the speed with which enforcement can be carried out, or legal proceedings and prosecutions, i.e. the length of time between a defect being identified and a prosecution being brought. Because unfortunately at present this can be years in some cases. Identifying the responsible person is the chief cause of this. It can be very problematic, and even once identified, they will often attempt to find a legal loophole to evade responsibility, and tightening this up would be of clear benefit. The bill could also be clearer on the ownership of premises, where the responsible person find it difficult to enforce front doors on flats in a building where some of the flats have been bought under right-to-buy legislation. Tightening that up would be very good. Similarly, the bill doesn't deal with the need for private owners of individual flats of a block to comply with risk assessments, which can cause a risk to a whole block. And tragically, there was an example of this in London in 2009 with the Lacanau House fire in the London Borough of Southwark. The fire on that occasion started in a flat that had been purchased under right to buy, where the owners had made structural alterations, knocking walls down, etc., without telling the local council. Risk was not assessed prior to these alterations, and any such changes ought to be notified to the building owner, and the responsible person must be informed in advance. None of these things, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I believe, are reasons to reject the bill at this stage, but I think and I hope all of them can be picked up as the bill progresses through Parliament. Thank you.